Welcome back to Anxious Faith. My name is James Burke. Now, one of the things we've often found in talking with guests on Anxious Faith is that a lot of people have had experiences with church, with their mental health, that hasn't necessarily been positive. As sad as that is, one of the things we found is that sometimes people in the church or the church itself doesn't know exactly how to engage with mental health or doesn't know how to respond to people when they're opening up about their mental health. And that's been true of some of the stories we've heard already. Going back through the last 12 episodes kind of thing, you hear these stories of people that are going, well, people came to me this way or said these things to me, which really didn't quite line up with my experience of what was going on in my faith for myself. But the thing is, it's not that every church is doing this wrong. And now we don't want to put certain churches or people up on pedestals kind of thing. I think as we're trying to learn how we can better support and love those around us in our churches, in our communities, in our family and friendship groups with their mental health, it is good to see how some people are trying to tackle this and what results they're kind of seeing from that. So today we're joined by Harrison. Harrison is a youth pastor in New Zealand. He's been involved in church ministry, but also has a bit of a personal connection to mental health challenges as well. So Harrison, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, James. I'll just introduce myself a bit.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So my name's Harrison. I'm a youth pastor in New Zealand, as you said. Grown up in a Christian family, kind of just, my dad was a pastor as well, so have been in that sort of atmosphere my whole life. That's kind of a bit about me and my kind of actual journey just with churches in particular.
Yeah. Now, one of the things is that you've actually had some personal experience with some mental health challenges or mental illness, which I think is one of those things that sometimes in a pastoral role, pastors often have to deal with these things, but don't necessarily always have the first-hand experience of going through it. But you do. Are you happy to share a bit about your kind of journey with your mental health challenges?
Yes, of course. I struggle a bit with anxiety. It's probably the biggest thing for me. And that kind of started all for me in high school, actually. High school was the first time where I kind of just really started to see it happening in my life and just really started to struggle with that. Mainly just the fear of rejection as part of that and just the social anxiety of not wanting to talk to new people. But that was because in high school I was bullied a lot and so experienced that, and that's kind of where that all kind of came from. But even since then, a lot of different events have happened in my life, causing a whole lot of other things, like my dad burnt out in 2019, which really contributed to it and brings a whole other factor to it of anxiety I didn't really think I had or was even aware of. So it's just a whole lot of things like that.
Yeah. If you're happy to talk a little bit about your experience in high school. So you said you were bullied, and unfortunately that is something that is quite common these days. What did, without having to go into the details of what the bullying was, how did that kind of impact you? Like you said, you scared of meeting new people or new circumstances. What was kind of going through your head during those times?
A lot of it was in the mornings before school, not actually wanting to go to school was a big part of it, because it was like, I know that these people are going to be here who, yesterday they might have hit me or said something really mean to me, and it's just like, I just really don't want to do that today. Yeah. Was kind of the big aspect of it for me. It was that sort of struggling with it, that I didn't even want to go to school because I didn't even want to see or talk or interact with these people at all. Yeah.
So does that mean it kind of got better or went away once you'd finished high school, or has it kind of carried on?
Yeah, so after high school, my anxiety did settle down a bit from that, because I wasn't running into those people each day. I didn't really have a fear of running into them too much anymore. And by then I'd surrounded myself with a few good people, especially at my church, where my good friends were, to focus on those friendships and those relationships and focus on what they're saying into my life. So it did settle down a bit, but that does not mean it stopped at all.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that your dad burnt out. Your dad was a pastor. You were working at the church with him, from what I understand. He burnt out 2019. What was that like for you? What did that bring up for you with your anxiety?
That was really tough. Both my parents are two of the most supportive people I know. And just when that happened, it was really tough on my mum and my dad in particular. But it was also really tough for my two brothers and myself. It was something that caused the rest of my family to stop going to church, and I was kind of the only one still going because I was youth leading at the time still. And it was, yeah, it was just that real fear of, I don't know how bad this actually is. What's this going to mean for Dad? I've always seen him as someone who was really strong, especially when Mum had a lot of health challenges growing up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just Dad was always someone who was really strong to me. And just seeing him burn out in this way, caused me to overthink and caused that side of anxiety to really come out for me, that I don't know what is going to happen with this. And I just felt really out of control with the whole thing.
Yeah, which is one of those things that anxiety does to us so much, is that it's just that overthinking, that constantly we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how we can control the situations or anything like that, which just continues to spiral in our minds, which is, it's so incredibly tough to deal with and so incredibly debilitating. But I want to kind of focus a bit on your work you've been doing. So, you're a youth pastor now. You have been youth leading before. But I think, how did you get into that, besides it kind of being the family job, so to speak?
Yeah, so let's see. So for youth, actually, I just loved youth group as I grew up in high school, because again, didn't really fit in at high school. That was not the place I enjoyed being at all. But I enjoyed waiting for a Friday night, which when we had youth group, and getting to the end of the week and seeing my friends there and hanging out and learning about God more, was what really drew me to that space. And that's what really got me involved in youth, was that I felt loved and belonged in this community. And so I wanted to create that same space for others. So that's what drew me to leading in that space. I did actually not want to be a pastor at all. That was just like the furthest thing from me. I was like, cool, Dad's a pastor, he can do that, that's all good for him. I'm fine over here not doing that. And then, just as I was working as a graphic designer for a bit, I just really felt God's call into ministry, and I was like, all right, I actually can't run from this. And so got involved with youth in a more, kind of serious way, in terms of being the main one organising these spaces.
Yep. And the current church you're at now, kind of thing, you're the youth pastor there as part of kind of a larger ministry team kind of thing. What's your kind of role there at your church?
Yes, I've been leading in this current role for about 3.5 years now, before youth leading at my old church. But the way it looks is I am the youth pastor, so I oversee a team of about 12 volunteers in that space, which is really, really good, and it just means we all get on really well, have some great camaraderie in our team. Sometimes we like going out for dinner, and just it's a really tight-knit team where we're all passionate about the same thing, and it's how young people come in to know Jesus in their own way. Yeah,
that's really cool. So it's kind of cool because you've kind of, you see that your experience with youth as a young person kind of is what has drawn you to that initially in wanting to create that space for young people, that you have that kind of, sanctuary in some ways from the troubles of what you're facing at school. So you kind of had that experience of youth being this really positive thing. You also had that negative experience of mental health challenges going on with the anxiety as well. And that's kind of, it's amazing how we see God kind of use those different parts of our lives and putting us in potentially a role where we can use those experiences and those challenges we've been through. So, one of the things I want to talk to you today is around how, you have kind of embraced mental illness in your youth and even in a broader church context as well, kind of thing. I think it's sometimes we're too scared to talk about it because we don't know what the kids might open up about or what other people might share with us. But in keeping it hidden or keeping it not talked about kind of thing, it almost amplifies the effect more than anything else. So, what were some of the things that you would find that the kids would be talking about? Were they open about their mental illness before you guys kind of intentionally started creating a space for that?
Yes, I've seen this constantly, the mental health challenges happening through our youth, but also when I was a youth, that was a big struggle for people as well. And I feel as though it's something that hasn't been talked about as much as it should be, but progressively more and more I am seeing it talked about more, and it's amazing because I think it is something that does need to be talked about and shared. So it is talked about, and I'm noticing the openness of it a lot more now than when I was a youth, which is really cool to actually see that people are open to this. Yeah, because it's conversations that they're having at school and at home and with their friends, and so it's like this is actually a really special place, and that's why we wanted to do a series on it at youth. Yeah. So tell us about that series. What was that kind of you decided to do, and how did that play out for you guys? Just with all the mental health challenges in our youth, but also amongst even our youth leaders, we decided to do a mental health series looking at this, but mainly looking, because they are having these conversations at home and in their friendships and at school. We wanted to do this for our youth group as well. We wanted our youth and our leaders to just see, where is God in these challenges? Because it's so easy to not bring God into those conversations, which is what we found. And then towards October last year, one of the youth came up to me and just said, like, "Hey, I really think it'd be awesome if we did a series on mental health. Yeah. I just think it's something really important and that needs to be talked about." And at that point, I was like, "Yeah, I feel so strongly. We definitely need to." Yeah. And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna pray about this for like another week." And even after that, I had about 3 other people within the week come up to and say to me, like, "I think we should do a mental health series in youth." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, we definitely are doing a mental health series in youth at some point." Then we did a mental health series, and that was amazing. I just couldn't have dreamed of it going better.
What was the series? What did you guys actually do as that series?
Yeah, so the way we did the series was we started it off on a couple of youth nights with people, either former leaders or people that we know, coming in and sharing their own personal experience with different things. So we had someone come in and share about anxiety. We had someone come in and share about self-harm and depression and suicide. And it was just really good to, first of all, hear their own stories, hear real people talking about this. But then it was real cool because they didn't just stop that there. They then dove into scripture and looked at, okay, what does the Bible say about this? And then they took that even further and went, okay, where is God in this? Where was God in my mental health struggles? And where is he now? How did I see him when that was the case for me? And I think that was just really amazing about it. And then even after that, we go into some small group time and just had some really open discussion. And through this whole series, we saw our youth become more and more open to having these conversations and talking to people, talking to their small group about it. Yeah. And because realizing, okay, I actually don't have to face this alone. I've got people who love and care about me here. And so I want to share this as well. Yeah. And then on the last night of the series, we had a bunch of our youth leaders on a panel where it was our youth leaders sharing those exact things that we talked about. What do they struggle with? Where was God in it? What does the Bible say? And it was just so amazing just to see the response. It was probably our longest night that we've spoken at youth, but our youth were the most attentive I've ever seen them, because it was just like, this is clearly something that is so important that we need to be talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that you guys have led with the whole, let's share real stories, let's share personal stories of people who have actually gone through this, rather than trying to just tackle it abstractly or in theory and that kind of thing. But teenagers can be kind of brutal. What was that like for you and your youth leaders to actually go, no, we're actually going to, sit up the front or stand up the front in front of our youth and actually be open and vulnerable about our own mental health challenges?
I think because as youth leaders, we see it in our youth. We hear them talk about it, and so we know that they're struggling with this. And so I think it was that for us, being like, we struggle with this as well, and our youth do as well, but we're actually slightly further along in our faith journey than they are. And so actually us getting up there and sharing about our struggles and about how we deal with it, and where's God in it, is just the real big point of it for us, which is why we did it. And honestly, it was amazing. And like I said earlier, they have these conversations at school and with their friends. And so it's amazing to actually bring God into that conversation. I think that was one of the biggest things for us of wanting to do this series, was that, we're not the ones. This might be kind of scary for us, but God's got this, and this needs to be talked about. We can't shy away from this as a youth group.
Yeah, I think that's really key as well, because so often we see that, if the church has perhaps not talked about it or not engaged it too much kind of thing, where we are lagging a little bit behind because they're talking about it at school, they're talking about it at uni, they're talking about it in workplaces, that kind of thing, about, being open about this. This is a factor that people deal with, and how do you deal with those things? So being able to bring God into it is a pretty amazing privilege, and I think a really amazing step that you guys took as the youth. So what was, you say that the youth were then more willing and open to share and things like that. So what was that kind of, what else did you see come out as a result of having this series on mental illness?
Well, one of the things we actually really stressed to all our youth during this series as well is that as youth leaders, we're not trained counsellors. We are not going to be able to solve their problem, but we're in a really unique space that, as Christians, we want to pray for you and we want to be here to support and a listening ear for you. Yeah. And if we think you need to go see a counsellor, we will recommend that. We're not going to force you to, because ultimately that's an individual's decision. Yeah. But that's what we want to do, and that's what was really cool. I think that's what made them also feel a bit open to do this, is that they have these relationships with their small group leaders, so that they felt that they could go to them and talk to them and talk to their group about this is what I'm struggling with, and I actually really need help, or I just need you to pray with me right now, because it's really, really tough. Yeah. And I think it was just that big factor, realizing that they're not alone in this, that they are not the only person who struggles with anxiety or with depression, that some of their leaders have struggled with that in the past, some of their leaders still struggle with it, that I struggle with it, that they're not alone in this. And I think that was the really big point of it, that actually, that openness, that for them to be open with us. Yeah.
And so you're finding now that they are more willing to kind of reach out for help when they need it?
Yeah, it's been really good. Over in New Zealand, we've got quite a few resources and phone numbers you can call for help, and it's just been amazing. And even just some of the youth scene counsellors, leaders as well. And it's just been really good just to see this openness and people wanting to talk about it. Even after we finished this series, a few of the youth have said they were like, "Oh, we just want to do the series all year round. Like, we just want to constantly be doing this because it was amazing. Like, it was just so cool to hear other people and really see, I'm not alone." And that was actually like, wow, okay, this actually really did have an impact. That they wanted us to do the series all year round. Like, we've got other stuff we want to talk about as well, but
it's important, but it's not everything to life, right?
Exactly.
That's really cool. And I think one of the things we find is that when we're open about it, when we share about it, is that we give people that permission to, if we're going to be vulnerable and we're going to be willing to share, hey, this is something that, us as youth leaders go through, this is something I go through, people go, oh, okay, wow. If immediately you being vulnerable gives people that permission to be vulnerable in return, kind of thing, which I think is such an important thing. Look, I think it's an amazing... I think it's an amazing story about how just that willingness to not take the easy way out, of not going, oh, we're not counsellors, we're not trained in this stuff, let's not engage in this, let's save that for the professionals, especially because, sometimes some of the stuff people can disclose is pretty confronting, but going, hey, we know our place, and our place is to help you, show you where God is in this. And I think that's really huge, because so often that's the issue that people with faith are struggling with. It's just like, where is God in this?
Exactly.
How have you found that, if I can ask, in your own personal mental health journey, have you ever had to wrestle with that whole, where is God in this? Why am I having to go through this and feel these things?
I've never doubted for myself my faith in this. I have seen people who have, though, and I'm not saying because I haven't that I'm better at all. That does, and just because I haven't doubted it doesn't mean sometimes I'm like, this sucks. Like, God, I don't know why this is happening to me right now, but this is actually just not fun. And so, I mean, for me, I've got some great support networks of people I can talk to, seeing a counsellor as well. And it's not something that, I'm shying away from, because, this is something I struggle with. It can be a daily struggle, but ultimately God's got this. and I don't believe this should be the thing that's actually weighing me down. And the only thing that's having a really big impact on my life.
For you personally, then, are there passages in the scripture that kind of help you hold true to God during this, even when it can, on a day-to-day, feel like this is terrible and I don't want to be going through this? Are there passages, are there parts of the Bible that give you comfort in that?
Yeah, there are so many. Like, honestly, scripture's just full of like people suffering. It's like, we constantly are seeing God's people suffer. We've got the Psalms. It's just constant laments. It's just people like crying out to God. This sucks. Why is this happening to me? Where are you? And it's like, people in our day struggle with that too. And so I think that's a real good one. Even Joseph, sees evil plans and there's divine purposes from it. It's just amazing. You've got Job that, God doesn't will these evil things. You've got Paul for the thorn of his flesh. And it's just like, it's these constant people, these really big names who are like, they're struggling. They've got these not so great things happening, but still turning to God and ultimately realizing who he is.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's, I think, one of the things that really echoes from my experience as well, is that finding that permission from seeing in the Bible that, hey, these big heroes of the faith didn't necessarily have it all together. They still felt the weight of what they were dealing with. They still, Paul begged God to take away the thorns in his flesh, kind of thing.
Yep, exactly.
Joseph spent how many years in prison, kind of thing. You can imagine what his headspace would be like during that.
No, exactly.
But ultimately going, okay, well, they felt these things. I don't have to try and put on the happy face the entire time with God and go, yes, I'm suffering, but you are awesome the entire time, because actually he wants us to be real with him. He wants us to come to him as we are, and to seek him as we are, kind of thing, because that's how he can then actually minister to us if we're being open and real. I want to talk a bit bigger picture then, kind of thing, because it's not just your youth that is kind of tried to open this space up a bit, but it's your kind of whole church in general as well. So you told me before the interview kind of thing that your church kind of ran a whole series on wellness kind of thing. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we did a well-being series as our church, which was really exciting. It was something that I was really passionate that we were doing, because it wasn't just mental health that we were covering. It was, we're looking at emotional, we're looking at spiritual, physical, and it was just so amazing just to look at that. And it was just great to see more of our congregation coming up for prayer in that, just being like, wow, that's what I'm struggling with. And, again, I'm not the only one who struggles with this. It's just been really good. And I think that's been probably the best thing about it that we did at church, was that people are realizing they're not alone, that God wants to help, that there are people who love them and want to help as well. And this feeling of support that I'm not alone in this.
I think there's also, when we talk about it in that way, we almost give people the words and the language to know how to describe it if they've never really been able to say what it is they've felt before, kind of thing. Have you kind of found that as a church more broadly, people are then more open to start having these kind of conversations?
Yeah, I'd say from the series, a lot of our church is a lot more open to it. I mean, even our staff team, it's just been really great to see the more openness to it after doing this series. I mean, we had a reading plan on the Bible app as part of it, and that was just so amazing to see so many people engaging with it. As we dove into Scripture together, to see where's God in this as well. From the whole series, there's just this real openness to actually wanting to explore this more as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. You talk about how kind of as a leadership team or as a staff team kind of thing, it's been a really beneficial thing. Can you, without wanting to put you guys on a pedestal kind of thing, but how does this openness about mental health play out in your church staff and church leadership?
I mean, even in our church leadership and in our staff team, there's quite a few of us that, do have these different mental health challenges. We're not perfect. I don't want to put us on a pedestal either. We're not the best. Because, we struggle with this as well. And some of our staff really get it. Some of our staff who don't have these challenges, they understand that it is really tough, and these are tough situations to be in. And yeah, are really encouraging in that space. Last week even, I was meant to be at a conference for a couple of days, and I was just really encouraged to actually take a couple of days off, because it was actually just going to be too much for me to go. And I'm glad I didn't end up going to this and took a couple of days just for myself. And I felt really encouraged by a couple of people in particular. And it was just really amazing to have that support. But again, not all our staff actually get it, which is okay. Yeah. This is a journey, and everyone's got their own journey with mental health. Whether it's something they've dealt with themselves, or whether it's something that they've got absolutely no experience with. But everyone's at a different point in the journey, and I think that's something where we actually need to all be gracious towards everyone with that.
Yeah.
That I'm struggling, and as mental health is being talked about a lot more, but someone's going to be at a different step on this journey than I am, and so we actually all just need to be gracious to each other in this.
Your next gen pastor was saying to you about how I know you need to have this time off. You're not going to go, and I know you're going to feel guilty, but blame me because you're feeling better now, yes, but if you had have gone, you wouldn't actually be feeling better. Because I think that was a really good illustration about how someone can get it for someone else and give them the permission to actually have that break. Yeah,
so last week I was supposed to go to a conference for a couple of days, but kind of got to the day of the conference and I was like, I actually don't even know if I can do this. And I was talking to our next gen pastor, who's my boss, and she was just really supportive of me in this space, going, I'm going to support you if you go, I'm going to support you if you don't, but do what's best for you right now. Don't worry about disappointing anyone. Don't worry about disappointing yourself. If you need someone to blame me. Like, I don't mind being the bad person in this situation. Just do what you need to look after yourself in this space. And yeah, it was just really encouraging, because even a couple of days into the conference, I was like, and these days off that I was taking, I was like, this is so much better. Like right now, like I feel quite a bit better, which is great. But that left me feeling a bit guilty, and I was like, no, like I shouldn't be doing this. This was a good move to not go. And just remembering, like, our next gen pastor's words, going, it's almost like she was telling me, no, you shouldn't go. And that was the person that was making the call. And it was just really encouraging to have her support in that.
I guess because that's one of those things where you're given the chance to have that break, and you're given the chance to recover, and you start to feel, I'm feeling okay, I should be there instead, kind of thing. But the reality is that if you had have kind of tried to push through and go, you probably wouldn't be as good as you were doing with having that time. But I think that's really important, that people can, it's not just a knowing that someone is dealing with these things, but it's about, hey, how do I actually give you permission to actually look after yourself in that? Because I think that's a huge thing as well. That it's one thing to say, hey, this is what I deal with. It's another thing for other people to go, yeah, I get that, I accept that, and now I'm giving you permission to go and look after yourself the way that you need to look after yourself, which is huge. What this is kind of a more of a big picture question, but. Why do you think it's so important for churches to be engaging with mental health so much on the front foot?
For quite a few reasons. Because first of all, it's a bit of a taboo topic that not many people want to talk about. That some churches just don't want to talk about, because it just seems really scary and way too big at the moment. But I think what's so important to do it, and something that I'm glad that we've done this wellbeing series and that we did this mental health series at youth, and the reason I think churches should do this and why it should be so important that people do, is to bring God into the conversation, to realise that we're not alone in this, that people struggle with this. We see people in the Bible struggling with this, but God, He wants to help us, and so. We're having these conversations at work, at home, at school, at uni, wherever it is. So actually have these conversations at church as well, because we're going to get something different at church that we're probably not going to get, at work or in school, about where God is in this. And so that's why I think it's so important, because, I think God's such a big part of our lives, especially like at church. So He should be a big part of our lives on this as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And in some ways that kind of comes back to, your own experiences. Like,
Yeah.
You've told me before this interview about your heart for people to not be experiencing the kind of stuff that you had to go through. What is your kind of big desire to see as for your youth, for your church, as we start to be more just mental health is part of our life, mental health is part of our faith? What are you hoping we kind of can get to?
Honestly, I would just love all the mental health challenges to disappear.
Yeah, how good would that be, right?
How amazing would that be? But I think what is really cool about it, and what I'd love to keep seeing happening, is just this openness for people to talk and be upfront with what they're struggling with. Because, actually sharing it with other people, it does seem scary, and it can be scary, but actually it's great to share it with people who love you and respect you and wants what is best for you.
Yeah.
Because you're not alone in this, and I think that's the biggest part of it. And just this ability to come together in Christ and just to pray for one another in these challenges is just so important.
Yeah, that real authentic journeying and community and fellowship of being able to go, hey, yeah, we're in this together, and so I'm actually going to be with you in all of the bad times, not just celebrating with you in the good times. So I guess, from your experience with what you've gone through as a church and in your youth group, with making yourself and your other youth leaders being open and vulnerable and trying to create this space of openness and vulnerability and sharing, how, do you have any tips or ideas about how other people can start to do that, to try and build that kind of a more authentic, open, vulnerable community?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for it is actually just realizing that you're not alone. I know that it's tough to feel that sometimes because, in these challenges, you do feel really isolated and by yourself in them. And even if you don't feel like talking to people first, talk to God first, I think is the biggest one. Like, he's right there. And, dive into the Bible and actually see, other people have struggled with this before. And what did they do? They turned to God. And that's what I need to do in this time as well. And, you can do that more and more. And then you might get to that point where you actually are like, okay, I actually feel ready to talk to people about this now. Because you never know. Someone might be in the exact same space as you. With some encouragement for you in this space. Or just wanting to pray for you. Or just wanting to be that listening ear or that shoulder to cry on. But, find people that genuinely just care and love you and wants what's best for you, I think is what I'd say to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, this is it's such a great encouragement and it's such a great idea that, see how other people have turned to God from Scripture kind of thing and see how that is one of the ways we can. And like you say, we want to be this space where we can be sharing experiences, encouragement for people that might be going through this, that otherwise feel they are alone. But it's interesting because even getting to this place where you've seen this kind of change, you've seen this more increased vulnerability and openness and willingness to share amongst your amongst the staff, amongst youth, even amongst the broader church community as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that your anxiety just goes away, right? This is something you still have to struggle with. Is that right?
Yeah, this is something I still struggle with, and some days are worse than others. Some days it's just like, I just can't be bothered getting out of bed. Like, even if I'm just going to work, it's like, I'm already open with the people that are there, but I just don't feel like talking to anyone today. And so there are days like that where I'm still struggling, and I'd say I'm pretty open with my struggle with it, in terms of actually speaking about our youth and our staff in wider context, and even just my different support networks that I have. But yeah, some days it's still really tough, and it's not something that I am quickly getting over. And it's a constant struggle. But this is where I'm glad that I've got people around me, that I've got this reminder of who God is and what He says is His word is true. And so I think that's what I'm holding on to in this. That this is not the end for me. That this is not what God has planned.
And that's it, because I think it's important that people know that, hey, creating the right environment where we're all open about this doesn't mean that it's going to make everything easier.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that these challenges are going to go away. But like you say, like there's at least the freedom then to go, hey, I'm struggling in this. And you can still find your hope in God and your hope in that, He has a plan and that this isn't the end for you, kind of thing. So Harrison, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's so encouraging to hear what you're doing with your youth. It's for me personally, it's one of those things where I wish there were these conversations when I was that age and going, or not even that age. We won't go into how old I am. But it's one of those things I wish that people had talked about more. And I hope that people will continue to do that. Like you say, it's not gonna make things better. It's not gonna necessarily take away those issues. It's not that you guys are trying to put yourselves out there as, hey, we're the ones who can solve this for these young people, but we can bring God into it, which so often is lacking. So thank you for that encouragement. Hope that your ministry continues to grow and flourish as you guys are open in this stuff. So I appreciate you sharing with us.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed being on it.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. If it was helpful or encouraging, we'd love for you to drop a like on it and share it around. You can see way more content on our website, anxiousfaith.org, where you can listen to each episode of the podcast, find more resources, and read our blog all around mental health and faith. Be sure to also follow us on socials via the links in the description and subscribe to our channel so you can be kept in the loop when we're dropping more content for you. Thanks so much and God bless.